Review and Scrutiny Panel. Fire alarm procedures. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices down the main staircase opposite the lifts in the foyer. Assemble in Hawley Square on the Green. Officers will assist you and advise you when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Would everyone present please ensure their mobile phones are turned to silent, including me. And that they are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst the meeting is in progress. Please note this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and will be subsequently broadcast on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? No? Any member of the public who objects to the possibility of being filmed may wish to take this opportunity to leave the meeting. I would advise that if filming takes place, anyone in attendance in the public areas may have their image captured. I urge anyone filming proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly if children are present. Are there any members who wish to speak under 20.1? No. I have received three requests for public speaking on agenda item 10. Mr. Macmillan, Mr. Gifford, and Mr. Doody, all of which will be called to speak at agenda item 10. Apologies have been received from Councillor Paul Moore, for whom Councillor Nichols is present. Apologies have also been received from the Chair, Councillor Fellows, for whom Councillor Wright is present. Are there any other apologies for absence?
Apologies from Councillor Pope.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Item 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of October 2025. To approve the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel meeting held on the 14th of October. A copy is attached to the agenda pack. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Davis. Seconder, Councillor Curry. Do members agree? As we've got public speaking, I'm going to bring item 10 forward to this point on the agenda. Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing Policy. I will now call on Penny Button to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So, as an authority, we currently don't have a policy in place with regard to the licensing of drivers, vehicles and operators. This was originally considered pre-COVID, but was never put in place due to resource issues and the fact that this team were very busy dealing with COVID stuff. We have various application procedures, driver and vehicle conditions within this document. We pull them all together and with some new procedures, including codes of conduct. The policy is based on those from other local authorities in Kent. There is currently no national procedures or policies in place. However, this is being looked at by the Transport Committee inquiry, which has launched a call for evidence in October this year, and the details around that call for evidence are in your annex. The policy was put out for consultation between the 19th of June and the 8th of August. All replies can be found in Annex 17 of the report. We were lucky enough to receive significant feedback, which we have considered, and following this, a number of changes have been made to the draft policy, all of which are highlighted in the documents. For those of you looking electronically, they should be yellow, but they're highlighted so you can see the changes we've made. These include the removal of the requirement to use a different garage for compliance checks at new and renewal, the 6 monthlies. The requirement for operators to submit monthly lists of drivers on their books. This has been changed to be on request of the licensing authority. Hackney carriage vehicles must not be left unattended has been changed to unattended on ranks. Working hours driving limits has been updated. The dress code section, which included dress smart, tailored shorts and sports shirts, have been removed from the unacceptable standards. The penalty point scheme has been changed. Giving false information on an application has been updated to state in regard to convictions, refusal or revocation by another authority. The failure to wear a driver's badge has been removed or changed to failure to display. Failure to carry a fire extinguisher and first aid kit have been removed. Failure of a private hire operator to ensure vehicles attend punctually has been removed. There was lots of feedback around the points system that's included in this policy. Before anyone is given points, they would be spoken to first, as we always speak to drivers when we receive complaints in the first instance. Once we've established that, we would then look to give points if there was an ongoing issue. If a driver wanted to appeal any points they were given, they could appear before the licensing board. The other section that we've had a lot of feedback around is the changes to the vehicle ages, and recommendations for this can be found in Annex 19. We've included the maximum age at new has been changed from 5 years to 7 years. So as soon as the policy comes into effect, this will be in place for any new vehicles that are registered. The maximum age at renewal, so this is for all existing vehicles, will be 10 years. This will have a 2-year transitional period, so it will therefore come into effect in 2028, the same year that obviously we merge with other councils and restructure it. There is no age restriction on fully electric vehicles, and it's proposed that fees are waived for the period of this policy for fully electric vehicles. There's an unlimited age for fully adapted wheelchair vehicles. Hybrids, the age limit will be 12 years again, with the same 2-year transition period. So I'd like to invite the Overview and Scrutiny Panel to scrutinise, note and comment on the proposals to send to Cabinet to agree that the Hackney carriage and private hire policy as attached in this report.
Thank you. I now call on Mr Macmillan to address the panel. You have 3 minutes, Mr Macmillan.
Right, thank you. So about 10 years ago, I asked Thanet District Council licensing and some of the elected members to follow government guidelines for taxi and private hire to facilitate meetings, and they did that. Drivers had a voice, and this led to some great initiatives such as visitor ambassadors and also training from the police to inform drivers how to identify intelligence and promote intelligence reporting around drug dealing, modern day slavery and people trafficking. All good initiatives when we were working together. So about 6 years ago, licensing worked with the trade to produce a draft policy, as it's been mentioned. Nothing happened at all. We were working together, we produced the policy, on the shelf, nothing since. Now, it's a sledgehammer to crack a nut, or that's how it feels to us as drivers. Since then, TDC stopped meeting with the trade, and more recently they produced these current set of guidelines. There's been too many miscommunications around changing the date consultation ends, who can speak at which meeting, and issues raised by drivers completely ignored by the council. And something I think is really important is that, in my personal opinion, all drivers should, in this day and age, be required to have a working card machine in their taxi. It's not acceptable for members of the public to be left stranded because they don't have cash. Now, a lot of drivers will disagree with that. Maybe they want to keep the cash, I don't know. But that's my issue. But completely ignored. I ask this committee to consider if your decision-making process could have been much better informed if the council had worked with the trade to develop the core themes of this policy. Again, Thanet slips down in the government-listed areas of deprivation. Yet the council want to introduce the punitive penalty point system. And of course, we've heard that they have responded to some of the ridiculous things that were in there, frankly, and they've made some changes. But again, it's symptomatic of punishing drivers. And it's just a horrible thing. It's a horrible feeling to be working under that kind of environment. Now, I respect government guidelines, and clean air conditions and all that are very important. But we have to be so careful about age restrictions. And I appreciate that they've been changed from 5 to 7 years. But I don't want anything happening to being forced onto drivers that is not legally required within the current government guidelines for when electric cars are coming in and all that sort of thing. I want to make sure that that's followed. That's my point there. Nothing should be forced on the trade unless it's from national regulated standards. So I'm really asking this committee to pause any decision for the next 2 years. I would much rather that this council paid attention to their own policy and facilitated annual meetings at least, and ongoing meetings to consult with the trade, like we used to, so that this massive change is not too complex. Drivers can't understand it. It's far too much. As I said, it's a sledgehammer to crack a nut, and it's just too much. It would be much better, and we'll have better ownership and better understanding if you had gone through it with us in bite-sized chunks. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Could I now call on Mr. Gifford to address the panel?
Thank you, Chair, members, fellow operators. My name is Andrew Gifford. I've been a licensed private hire driver in Thanet for almost 15 years. I drive an 11-year-old Ford Tornio minibus, fully compliant, regularly MOT'd and depended on by families and tourists. I support cleaner air, but this proposed 7-year age limit with only a 2-year transition imposed in weeks will destroy livelihoods, mine included, and risks being unlawful. English common law protects my right to earn a living in a lawful trade. The courts are clear. No one can arbitrarily prevent me from doing so. Nunn versus Southern Railway, 1891. You can regulate, but only proportionately, and where the public benefit clearly outweighs the harm. 3 questions. Is forcing hundreds of us to scrap roadworthy vehicles overnight at £20,000 plus each proportionate, especially when Thanet has some of the lowest fares in the country? This isn't gradual improvement, it's economic eviction. 2, where is the published impact assessment showing how many drivers will quit, how many businesses will close, and how taxi shortages will push people back into private cars, actually increasing emissions? 3, why ignore natural wastage, the fair, lawful, proven alternative? Let new vehicles meet Euro 6 and let existing safe, compliant vehicles continue until normal replacement or retirement. Councils like Hyndburn and North Kesteven have done exactly that, successfully and legally. The DFT's own statutory standards demand policies that are evidence-based, proportionate and developed in proper consultation with the trade. You've consulted, but have you listened? A sudden 7-year cliff edge is unreasonable and risks breaching common law, the human rights and your own guidance. A 5-year phased transition with grandfathering for existing compliant vehicles is reasonable, lawful and still delivers your environmental aims without breaking livelihoods. I built my business from nothing. I serve this community every day. Please, pause this rollout. Publish the full impact assessment, adopt natural wastage and a proper extended transition. If you don't, this won't just be bad policy, it will be an unlawful interference with our ancient right to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gifford. Do members have any questions for the officer? decided he doesn't want to.
Thank you, Chair. I think I want to reiterate what Mr. Gifford's just said, because something puzzles me about this. Age of vehicles quite important, obviously, or was back in the days where a 5-year-old car had its wings flapping and hanging off. We'll remember the well, actually, most of you won't remember the days of smiley cars and their yellow Mark III Cortinas, because you weren't here. However, Thanet relies on its cab trade, and with 2 MOTs in a year and the visuals, why is it necessary to put any age limit on a vehicle? Because if it passes its MOT and it passes its emissions test, it's up to scratch. So I'm afraid I disagree with any form with modern technology. When I drove, and I'm going back 30 years, we had vehicles that needed to be regularly assessed. Nowadays, many 20-year-old vehicles visually look as good as when they were new, and if their running gear and emissions are being checked on the MOTs, given what's been suggested about the legality of this, I think we need to look very closely at a few revisions here and make it fair on the driver. You know, we've got, here we are banging away saying that we want to create jobs, and we're trying to destroy jobs at this rate. Or put the fares up so much to pay for this initiative that no one will use them, and the end result again is loss of jobs. So I'm afraid I agree with Mr. Gifford and agree most vociferously on that I think this needs a lot more looking at, and perhaps some common sense involved. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes. Councillor Curry.
I'd like to say thank you to the licensing officers for their work on the draft policy. I know the team have listened carefully to the operators and the drivers' concerns during the consultation period, and many amendments have been made. As Chair of the Licensing Board, I fully support the policy before us. I know there's still time for some tweaks, but I believe the policy is 99% there. As far as the ages of the vehicles go, Thanet has got a less strict policy than other areas. The 10-year rule has got a 2-year transition period. Other areas, they haven't got that, and for instance in Swale the level is 8 years for a renewal. In Thanet it's 10 years. The fact is that when we're a unitary in 2028, there'll be a standardised policy, and the 10-year maximum on any vehicle will be across the board. In Thanet, we've got a 2-year transition which will help drivers that have got the older vehicles. I drive an older car myself. I understand that older cars can be kept in good condition, but there is going to be a standardised policy, and we have to accept that. I think that the officers have worked extremely hard to get this right, and the majority of drivers that I've been in contact with and the operators are pretty happy with this policy. There are 1 or 2 areas that maybe could be tweaked, but if we ended up with the most less strict policy in the area, we would be inundated with drivers from other areas. We would be swamped with drivers. We can't have that. We have to have a fairly standardised policy, and as I say, here in Thanet we are less strict than other areas, and I would urge members to support this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. I also sit on licensing, and one of the concerns I had was the number of drivers that could possibly be impacted. So if Annex 21, and I still haven't done the maths, but it looks as if possibly it's Annex 21, possibly about 80% of our fleet would be affected, which worries me quite a bit actually, and I just need to ask some clarity. So if I've got an 11-year-old car now, okay, will I have to replace it in 2 years' time, or will I have to replace it within weeks of this policy being ratified here, or ratified later on?
So I'll go one at a time, if that's all right, Councillor. So if you're an existing driver, no, there's a 2-year. If it's over 10 years, it's a 2-year phase in, so by 2028. If you're a new driver, yes, you would need to have it under 7 years.
So I would, my 11-year-old car can reach 13 years before I have to technically, but if I come from Canterbury, because Canterbury's rules are tighter than ours, I think Canterbury have just implemented this, so there's quite a lot jumping over, I think. So if I come from Canterbury, because I think I can still pick up clients in Thanet, I can still go into Canterbury, still operate from home in Canterbury, will I have to apply that rule straight away? I'm trying to get there, but it is quite... I sit on licensing and was very confused by it, so what I'm trying to establish is that if I come from another area, like people are, to take advantage of our less strict rules, will I have to apply the principle of a new car right now?
So anyone that registers a new vehicle that isn't registered with us currently, from the date of implementation of this, would have to apply the new 7-year rule.
I think it would have been useful for me, even on licensing, if I had have had an impact report on exactly how many drivers, given it looks like about 80%, how many drivers would be left in a difficult situation even with the 2 years
So
slippage.
in Annex 19 it does say it's 263 taxis.
Councillor Austin.
Sorry, I wanted to come back. Of those 200...
Councillor Austin.
Can we let Councillor Wing finish her questions, Chair, please?
Well, okay, but it's turning into a dialogue.
I think it's an important dialogue, if I may say so.
Sorry. What I'm trying to get at, the impact report, we would have then got some idea of how many of those 200 taxi drivers might find themselves in a difficult situation and then cease to operate, which would leave quite a lot of our vulnerable residents who use taxis in a difficult situation.
Councillor Austin.
I was going to pick up on some of the same issues looking at the age of vehicles, and I wanted to ask Ms Button if you can give us an idea, are we thinking that a lot of drivers from out of the area are likely to want to come to Thanet if we have more lenient regulations, and that thus what our colleagues have heard, what we've heard from our colleagues actually is going to be exacerbated by more competition, more perhaps than the business can afford?
So we can't say for certain because it's not our business in terms of how much they have through their books. We don't get that information, that's down to the operators. But we have seen an increase in the number of people applying to register their vehicles with us because we don't have any age limits at the moment, so that's why.
Councillor Nichols.
Yeah, just a quick one. Where does that leave us with Uber licensing and cabs?
In what respect?
To do with actually being licensed within the district and their cars, do they come outside of this? They don't. Thank you.
They currently and will have to adhere to everything that's in here and all of the legislative requirements.
They ask, how much flexibility do we have over the age of vehicles?
That in terms of what you want to propose or in terms of the flexibility?
Well, is there any flexibility or is what's in the policy?
So we're proposing what's in the policy with the statement in Annex 19 to support what we're proposing.
Yes.
If you want to
But do we
suggest
have any,
something
do
else,
we
that's
legally
entirely
have any
up to you.
flexibility?
Yes, we legally have flexibility.
The overview and scrutiny panel. Oh, sorry. Are asked to endorse the recommendation to Cabinet. Which is to agree the adoption of the Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy laid out in the annex. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Curry. And a seconder? Yep, Councillor.
Could I suggest an amendment of recommendations to Cabinet that we made without? Could I suggest a recommendation to Cabinet regarding the vehicle age issue?
An amendment, yes, of course you can. Yep. Go on.
I'd like to recommend that whilst we approve, obviously, and I think it's important that there's a framework and a structure, because those standards help everybody. I don't believe that sufficient, as whatever other councils want to do, let's be an exemplar and let's use our brains and look at this. You know, we also have the carbon footprint.
So your amendment is?
We've got the carbon footprint of more vehicles being produced to replace the 200, even if they can afford them. So I'm going to suggest that we recommend this, but with a moratorium on the item relating to age, pending further investigation.
Okay, you've got that. Anybody want to speak to the amendment? All those in favour of the amendment? Is that 4? 5?
5. Oh, 6, yeah.
6. All those against? That's carried. Oh, well, John Davis proposed, and I didn't ask for a seconder, sorry.
If we can just do that, that'd be great.
Could somebody put their name forward to second the amendment? Yeah, Councillor Wright, thank you. That's carried. So now we go back to agreeing the adoption of the Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy as amended. And the amendment is to recommend that to the amendment to Cabinet. All those in favour? 7? Against? That's carried. Sorry. Apparently I should have had a proposer and seconder for that. I'll propose it. And Councillor Davis is seconded. Thank you. And thank you for speakers. Yeah. Yeah. Next item is item 4. A presentation on Ramsgate Neighbourhood Programme Regeneration Plan. I will call on Louise Askew to make a presentation.
Thank you. Originally, we were hoping to be able to bring a draft version of the regeneration plan and vision to be submitted to central government, but we are still in the process of working with the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board to finalise the vision and priorities for the programme. I think by way of reminder, the currently within this presentation called Plan for Neighbourhoods programme is run by a board of Ramsgate representatives, and they are the decision maker. Thanet District Council is the accountable body, and we are responsible for ensuring that the decisions made by the board sit within our governance, financial requirements and adhere to law. So our role in bringing this through the decision-making process is to get endorsement from Cabinet for submission of the regeneration plan, which will happen in 2 weeks. So a bit of background by way of reminder, it's £20 million of funding and support. It's over a 10-year period. Funding starts from 26-27. It is an improved regeneration programme on previous ones that we've had funding from, in that it does actually have an element of revenue. So it's 25% revenue and 75% capital. A really key part of this programme is about engagement, and I'll talk a bit about that later. And there are 3 key objectives to the programme set out by central government: thriving places, stronger communities, and taking back control. This is all available on the council's website. So we were tasked with setting up a board that includes a variety of organisation and membership across Ramsgate. Each of these board members have provided biographies, pictures, declarations of interest, all of which we hold and publish the relevant information. Some of these members are relatively new, and the board has met 3 times so far. We have all agendas and minutes are all published on the council's website. This is the boundary that has been proposed and approved by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. The boundary sent to us for the programme actually didn't include any of the green or blue spaces that we have in Ramsgate, so that Jackie Baker's wasn't in there, the seafront wasn't in there, because their metric was from the built up areas data. So it basically included houses and buildings. So we argued that it should be inclusive of those green and blue spaces, and this is the Ramsgate neighbourhood plan area, which made most sense, and MHCLG did not argue with that. So as part of the submission, we are required to provide a 10-year vision that comes from our communities and our residents and stakeholders about looking at what the case for change is, building on our engagement and robust evidence base, thinking about what investments will deliver change in Ramsgate over the next 10 years. We're also required to provide a 4-year investment plan. Some areas will be providing projects within their regeneration plan. We were in the second phase of what was originally a long-term plan for towns. Other places have had a year on us in terms of developing their regeneration plan and their investment. So some places will have projects. We will put a general programme of funding allocation as set out by central government for the investment plan. But we will be looking at how projects will be selected and how the board will use their skills and capacity and capability to support Ramsgate's communities develop interventions that will make a difference to our town. So we've set out an engagement plan, and I know that I've spoken to councillors through a number of engagement sessions, but phase 1 was a broad survey. We had over 1,500 surveys completed from residents and just under 100 from businesses. That information was compiled with priority areas being delved into deeper through our phase 2 of engagement. We had 28 sessions across Ramsgate. Some were open, some were drop-in sessions, some were closed groups of existing organisations, and we worked with a number of different organisations in Ramsgate to facilitate and run those sessions. So places like St George's Church, Pie Factory Music, Ramsgate Town Council, and a number of other. We also held a councillors' engagement session and tested the priorities on Your Voice Thanet. Phase 3, which starts after the submission of the plan, will look at how we build on what we've found out from Ramsgate's communities, what the data and evidence says, and start to bring groups together to develop the projects and interventions that will deliver this programme of funding. The December board meeting, we will take a plan for that engagement activity and project decision making for approval. And then phase 4 is how do we engage with Ramsgate's communities over the delivery of the programme. So setting out an approach over the 10 years to how we engage with the communities and stakeholders, businesses in Ramsgate on its deliverability. Just a really short bit of information on some of the data. We will be publishing a full report on all of the data that we've gathered on the website, and that will be submitted to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. But as I said, we had over 1,500 surveys. We had a really good level of representation from young people, which is unusual for surveys, so we were really pleased about that. We have had some areas with less engagement, so people that were unemployed and people with disabilities. So we have started to look at that as part of the phase 2 engagement and think about how we work more closely with those communities. And as I said, it was about understanding people's satisfaction for Ramsgate, what are the things that are most important to them about their place and where the investment should be focused, and then thinking about demographic information to make sure that we are accessing as many of those of Ramsgate's communities as possible. I've just popped this one in here. This is about satisfaction levels, and this will be used as part of our baseline. And through the phase 4 of the programme, we will be testing this and understanding people's satisfaction. We are able to drill this down to ward levels and age groups and different types of communities, and that is something that we can do at a later stage to help inform, but it also links with things like our resident survey. This is an example of some of the context that we've built up. I think it's important to mention here the indices of multiple deprivation were released in the last couple of weeks. Ramsgate has got 2 parts of different wards that are in their lower super output areas that are in the top 1% nationally. Top actually isn't the best place to be. And then we have 7 that are within the, a further 5 that are within the 10% most deprived. They are mainly focused around the town centre. And we are drilling deeper into that data. I think it's important to note that doesn't necessarily mean parts of Ramsgate have got more deprived. It's a comparable or comparative statistic that looks at how the different measures of deprivation are in small, lower super output areas. We've gathered, I'm not sure why there's dollar signs in there, sorry. We've gathered information across crime, antisocial behaviour, commercial vacancies, skill levels, health, all to inform the regeneration plan sitting alongside the priorities and engagement activity. We asked, as part of the visioning work, if Ramsgate could talk, what would it say about itself? And this was something that somebody put up on Your Voice Thanet, and I really liked it, and we felt like it really resonated with Ramsgate, and I thought it was worth sharing this evening. Check everyone's read it. So some information on resident survey summary. We did a lot of work around what were the really important things that were priorities and what things felt more urgent, and that will help to identify potential quick wins and things that could happen relatively quickly within Ramsgate. We asked people what were the three top things people wanted for Ramsgate, and we've been able to measure that. So safe, clean and thriving were the highest. I'm sure no surprise to anyone in this room. But it also looked at what were the things that needed improvement, and quite often things like the town centre, antisocial behaviour were identified as needing improvement, and those will then support thriving as a place. Obviously, these slides will be shared, and all of this will be in the summary document when we publish it. There was crossover between the business survey and resident survey in lots of things, but clearly, although we had engaged with businesses within the town centre, but also outside, so manufacturing companies on the outskirts of Ramsgate were also part of this. The focus was very much around the town centre. How could organisations reduce their costs? There was real interest in employing people and supporting people in the town centre, but they were stuck in how they would be able to do that. They wanted more footfall and wanted to see more businesses opening up in Ramsgate Town Centre. So as I've said, these are the top 4 to 5 things, regardless of what the questions that we were asking, but crime, safety and antisocial behaviour, thriving town centre, which covered a number of things. Cleanliness come up a lot, and quite often that's about those vacant premises with fly posting, graffiti, just general not looked after. People want to be able to get easy access to the services they need. That was something that came through quite a lot from young people as well. A prosperous Ramsgate. I think that's really important in terms of the regeneration funding that we have access to, and availability of affordable housing, and that particularly came from young people. Sorry, I'll try and get through some of this a bit quicker, but these are some of the community frustrations. I've picked up some of this around how people feel when they go into the town centre. Quite often some of the comments were, we want improved or reduced antisocial behaviour in the town centre, but that often didn't link to, we want improved support for vulnerable people. I think it was more around, how do we just remove the challenge and the problem, and for this programme it needs to look holistically at that. And then it's no surprise that our town centres, albeit probably doing better than a number that don't have the kind of visitor economy that we have, and interest from independents, but people want improvements to our town centres. I'll skip through these and ask if you've got any questions.
Thank you, Louise. I'd just like to say it's obvious that this is an enormous amount of work for Louise and a very small team. So thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Louise. Yes, a huge amount of work, particularly pleased that we got so many responses to the surveys, and obviously we were all out there promoting those, and we're really pleased to have been able to work with you on that. And also the organisation of the feedback sessions at such short notice and in such a short period of time was superb. And they were really positive sessions to be part of. I've had lots and lots of it. You know, the one I was part of myself, I thoroughly enjoyed, and it was really interesting. And I've had similar feedback from people who've joined a variety of other sessions. So that has all been absolutely brilliant. Yes, please, can we have the slides, because there's so many good stats there that we can use for other things. But also, just about timescale now, what happens next? And my usual question, can you assure me that councillors will get the information and sight of the things before it goes out publicly, so we know when we're walking down the street and we don't get asked something that we know nothing about and make ourselves and the council look stupid? Thank you.
Chance of that. So the deadline for submission to central government is the 28th of November. The cabinet papers are due to be published tomorrow, I think. This is going to have to come later, the regeneration plan. We've got a board meeting on Friday, so the plan will be hopefully published on Monday ahead of cabinet reviewing it. We will do our best to share what we have got in terms of timescales, but we are incredibly tight in getting the information together, finalising the drafting and getting approvals. As you know, we've engaged with councillors from Ramsgate on a number of occasions and will continue to do so. I think what it's worth saying is it hasn't got a list of projects in. So we're not there. The actual investment isn't identified in this plan. I don't think you'll see any surprises in the plan in terms of what the priorities will be and what the vision will look like. But I will do my utmost on Monday to sequence the sharing of information, but we are up against it.
Councillor Crittenden.
Yes, I just wanted to agree with Councillor Austin that it was a very interesting presentation and the slides will be useful. My proofreader's eye thinks that there might be something a bit odd in the labelling of the pie chart. Don't answer that now, but before you send it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Louise. I think it's vitally important that the community's voice is heard on this. You'll be aware that I've still wished to have a conversation with you because the councillors' session I was switched out from, it was AI monitored, which means that the input of Ramsgate councillors has been skewed because our opinion, both Brenda Rogers and myself, I never did get into that meeting, and it was farcical because I was sitting clicking for 2.5 hours. That has skewed all information going forward because of the cumulative nature of AI. I've made my feelings on this pretty clear, but I want them on the record now, and I'd like your assurance, please, that Ramsgate councillors, and Ramsgate, by the way, for some reason this council seems to have decided that Pegwell is self-governing. Pegwell is part of Ramsgate, CT12, and yet repeatedly you draw a boundary, Cliff's End, you draw a line through Pegwell and cut Cliff's End off. Why is this? These residents deserve the same support as the rest of our residents, and we are being marginalised and isolated as an area in the town. I'd like it looked at, please, because it's a repeated pattern. And why should those people not have say when, as far as the government and every other authority is concerned, Cliff's End is part of Ramsgate?
Cliff's End's got its own council.
Yeah, I'm on it. It's a parish council.
It's a parish council, not part
but
of
it's still part of Ramsgate for administrative purposes. However, I think also, yeah, very, very, like you said, no surprises in what people came back with. But there's a simple way to make Ramsgate a better place and town centre more secure. The shops will fill, people will be more secure, and the place will thrive. Because what does thriving mean? It means people with disposable income and time. The only way we're going to get that is that, you know, that little word, J-O-B-S, jobs. And instead of having talking shops and all going round and round in circles, deciding what we might or might not be able to do, let's get behind the inward investors and the private sector that want to create jobs in the area and therefore get past this god-awful gig economy with seasonal fluctuations and people earning, if they're lucky, minimum wage. So let's, this is about regeneration apparently. Well, let's get some meaningful regeneration that sticks, because people with money in their pockets spend it in the high streets, they use the facilities, and when the place is thriving and there's a lot of activity, guess what? Antisocial behaviour goes down. So I think we need to give that a bit of thinking about and look at the outcomes rather than just talking about, otherwise we're no better than the county council where everybody knows what the problem is, but what is the solution? The solution is to deliver jobs and not to keep talking about what we might be able to do.
I think Louise made it clear that that comes next.
Well, I just want to make sure, sorry Chair, but I want to make sure that we're heard in there.
Louise, do you want
because
to
we're
answer any of
repeatedly...
that? Do you want to answer any of that?
Thank you. Yes, the engagement session with councillors was challenging in that I know you couldn't get in, and we tried to reset it up. And I think Sarah offered to have a meeting with you after that session to pick up anything. Just so we had about 593 different engagements as part of that. So I'm not sure how skewed it would be away from your input, but we're happy to take your input as part of the engagement, because of course it's important. And I think the thing to say that we have engaged with lots of communities, just because that's the boundary doesn't mean that communities and residents and businesses outside of that boundary haven't engaged as part of this process, because we know that our travel to work area is predominantly Thanet and then East Kent, so it's important to understand what's happening elsewhere. So and it might be that interventions happen in particular places like the town centre, but that is for benefit of all of Ramsgate, wherever the boundary is drawn, and actually the broader district. We have students coming into Ramsgate from all over Thanet and outside of the area. So just because an intervention isn't being delivered in a particular ward doesn't mean it doesn't benefit the residents of all of the district. And I completely agree about jobs and inward investment, and that sits within the thriving place element of this.
And then Councillor Scobie.
Thank you, and thank you for all the hard work. I think it's really important that not necessarily council voices are heard. I think we have a bigger role in monitoring going forward, but I think it's really important that you engage with the community, and I think you've done that hand over fist actually. So particularly engaging young people is not an easy thing to do, and you've managed that as well. And you've also pointed out the areas where there are weaknesses, so people with disabilities. Interestingly, did we manage to engage people of colour as well, black and brown people? Was that a particular... I know there is we've got hidden racism that exists in Ramsgate, which leads to a poverty of opportunity for people of colour, shall I say. So I definitely think that needs to be maybe highlighted. I like the look of the board. I think you've got some really good mix of people there with influence across a wide range. I just wanted to ask though, it's a 10-year plan, and I've been responsible for a 10-year plan when I was a senior teacher in a school. I'm making the assumption that it will be reviewed every year, and that a project that is going well will be pushed further forward, and perhaps a programme that doesn't do as well. So I'm assuming it will be a fluid 10-year plan that will be evidence-based changes going forward. The only other question I've got is, I'm assuming the People's Panel is different to the board. What is the remit of the People's Panel, and how will that be set up?
Thank you. So I'm going to work back, it's easier. The People's Panel is a group of individuals that should have no kind of affiliation to particular organisations, be politicians, officers of the council, but residents, and we will make sure that they are reflective of Ramsgate's communities. And we're just looking at how we run it. We have run one before, and we've taken a lot of learning from that. And it'll be a mix of online and in person. And it's about testing and checking and challenging. Is this right for Ramsgate? Is this reflective of Ramsgate? So we've got a bit of work to do to put the framework together, but we can come back and talk about that. So it's a 10-year plan. It has 3 investment plans. The first one is over 4 years, and there's another one for the next 3 years and another one for the last 3 years. So that's about putting out where the investment will go. Now, as I said, we haven't got projects, so that investment plan for the first 4 years is going to be quite light touch. So once we've been through phase 3, which is developing the projects, that 4-year investment plan will be more robust. It is an iterative process, and I think we've had agreement from central government on that. And there will be things on that priority list around clean and safe and other aspects that, as they are delivered, or as activity is delivered against those, they'll become less of a priority. So we'll do that testing back with communities. And we do need to do some more work around diversification on the board and through our engagement, and that's something we want to pick up in phase 3, because there were some communities that were overrepresented in our engagement and some that were less represented.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I want to echo sort of the appreciation for all the hard work that's gone into this. I think the amount of consultation that's taken part, the amount of opportunities for people to have their say, having sort of come in later than the original sort of Ramsgate project, it was sort of agreed and discussed before I became a councillor, seeing this sort of process coming through and the amount of work that's gone into it and the amount of opportunities for public engagement, it's really, really positive. Question I had was around the views that we got back from people and whether there was any variation based on where people lived in Ramsgate about what issues they were flagging up. So obviously Ramsgate is a big sort of area, and the views of people away from the town centre may be very different, but I was interested, were you seeing, I don't know whether you broke it down by sort of ward on that basis, but whether you saw a variance in terms of people talking from Northwood, Newington, Nethercourt in the same sort of voice around antisocial behaviour and wanting to clear up the town centre as you would in Central Harbour?
Thanks. So we have done a piece of work, and it's not here because I realised the time, to look at that. Particularly, we were interested to see if people that weren't at town centre sessions would still talk about the town centre, and they did. Even in Newington, where there was quite a lot of discussion around, is the town centre really for us, or is Westwood our town centre? There were things about what would help attract them to visit the town centre more often. So there were differences. I'm not going to pretend to remember them all, but crime and antisocial behaviour were picked up in other areas that weren't just about the town centre, although that was more of the focus because it's probably more obvious when you're there. But that was picked up in other areas, and we can do some more drilling into those kinds of statistics. Was that all of your question? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, thank you very much.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Louise, you seem to have done a lot, had a lot of surveys and done a lot of work. I'd be interested in, especially with the younger people, have they come up with any specific projects that they would like to see?
Thank you. So we haven't discussed projects per se. Some of the things have been about what would you like to see happen to make the town centre. So lots of people were saying we'd like shops in the empty buildings. So that's a kind of obvious thing that you would want to see. But actually how that happens is the project. So how that intervention is delivered is the project, particularly as the local authority, the town council, don't own most of the properties within the town centre that are vacant. The young people had loads of really good ideas around what they would like to see, where they would like to see it. Ultimately, quite a lot of their responses were about safeguarding the spaces they've already got. So the Pie Factory Music Building, but also some of their outdoor activities around health and well-being. So no specific projects are going in this plan. That's the next phase of engagement, but we will be working with organisations and different stakeholders to put those projects together so that they're rooted and embedded in the Ramsgate's communities, but also include the organisations that might be doing the delivery.
Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation is that we note the presentation. Is that okay? Thank you. Next item is item 5. Thank you, Louise. Is item 5, review of the OSP work programme. Do members have any questions to ask or comments to make on the work programme? Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, I'd made a suggestion at the last meeting that we might want to consider our next working party in the new year being focused around local government reorganisation. I think it was going to go back to the chair to sort of discuss with officers. Chair's not here. I mean, are you aware of anything as vice chair and discussions on that?
No, I'm not. Do we know anything on that?
Could maybe be brought up with
the I had a question regarding, we're due a presentation from Councillor Bright on tourism. I'm not sure what's happened to that either. Could we take note of that?
I think it was just put back because of the sheer volume of reports on this agenda.
So yeah, that's noted. Okay.
Sorry, Chair, for clarity. For clarity, did you say the leisure presentation will be December now? Because it was supposed to be in this meeting, but apparently it wasn't ready.
I can just confirm it was just put back because of the sheer volume of, or the sheer number of reports, that quite meaty reports at this. Unfortunately, it looks like December's meeting is also like that, but it is currently down for December.
Okay. It would have been good for the record to have had this feedback so that the council can give consideration to any information coming from that report that we need to address for next year. I just want to put that, it seems to me a bit weird that we're months after the summer and we still don't know what went on. So, just for the record.
Sorry, to note the work programme. Agreed? Thank you. Next item is TLS procurement of UPVC windows and doors and roof replacement contract. And I call on Bob Porter.
Thank you and good evening, councillors. Yes, as both Sally O'Sullivan and Ashley Jackson couldn't be with us tonight, so at various points in the meeting I'm going to be Sally and Ashley. So this report is relates to two contracts that we are seeking authority to procure. One for the replacement of UPVC windows and doors, and one for the replacement of flat and pitched roofs. Both of those programmes of work are influenced by the data that we hold about the condition of our housing stock, and we programme works on a cyclical basis to replace windows and doors and flat and pitched roofs when they need to be replaced. The individual budgets for those works are set on an annual basis. They're approved at full council as part of budget setting, and they are put together based on what we know needs to be replaced in the coming period. Based on the information we've got at the moment, we estimate that the value of both of those contracts will be £3 million over their lifetime. That's £3 million for each of those contracts. And the proposed contract period in both instances is 5 years with a 2-year extension. We're procuring over that period of time because it enables the team to build up a much more collaborative partnership relationship with contractors and ensure that we can provide high quality works to improve homes for our tenants. It's fair to say that the vast majority of that expenditure will be within the housing revenue account on permanent housing stock that is held within the housing revenue account, but you will be aware that we have recently approved a programme to acquire temporary accommodation in the general fund. We are also responsible for the long-term maintenance of those homes. So some of that expenditure would be general fund expenditure, and we, in the business planning for those temporary accommodation units, we made allowances to set aside revenue contributions to long-term capital maintenance costs. So the budgets are available to support these two contracts, say both at £3 million, both for a period of 5 years plus potential 2-year extensions. So this is going to Cabinet next week, and if members of this panel have any observations or comments or questions on the report or the proposals, then I'd be happy to help.
Any questions for Bob? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Bob. It looks excellent to me, not being a housing specialist. I'm particularly encouraged by the way that we're going to be asking questions around the broader issues for a potential contractor, their commitment to training, their climate change commitments and so on. What I wanted to ask about is the sort of elephant in the room always, which is about local government reorganisation. If we're taking on a 5-year contract, what do we think are going to be the implications of that when we merge with other councils?
Well, whatever happens in terms of local government review, the council, this council or its successor, will be the owner of the housing stock and responsible for its long-term maintenance. So that won't change. LGR doesn't change that. I mean, clearly, when we've got one unitary council covering a different area, that council will have new decision-making structures, and they will have a new statutory structure to the housing revenue account, because they'll, I mean, unless the government changes the legislation, that new council will be required to have a housing revenue account. We haven't actually had any conversations yet about how the merging of housing revenue accounts might work, and there's a whole load of complexities to do with the convergence of rent charges across districts, the convergence of our maintenance programmes and so on. I suspect that will take a number of years to sort out. But whatever happens, the new council will have ongoing maintenance responsibilities for the housing stock that we currently own.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on this run-on, I'd like a bit of clarity, because it's been made quite clear at various briefings that this authority and no other can bind the incoming authority, which is why we'll have the shadow authority for the 12-month period and then the bedding in period. On that basis, why are we entering into anything more than a perhaps 4-year contract to give a crossover? Should we be looking at 5-year and plus? Because I don't think we should, because the new authority may well come in, have a better alternative because of its logistics, and then be bound to paying out compensation for a contract that we didn't have to give in the first place. There's a bit too much of this to-in and fro-in, and we're being told one thing at LGR briefings about expenditure and so on. You know, it's in one breath it's business as usual, but we are aware we have to look forward. So can I perhaps suggest that we ask why we're doing anything for more than 3 years, given that this authority ain't going to be here in 3 years'
Might
time?
not happen, John. Who knows?
But it's happening. And then once the bill is through, and the devolution bill's in, there's a lot wrong with the devolution bill. But let's not start to sound like certain individuals in Maidstone that make it up as they go along. You know, there's the same people that 3 months ago asked for extra time because they didn't have a handle on local government reorganisation, and now trying to brainwash people it might not happen. Well, short of meltdown in government, it's happening.
Well, I think the question is what's the rationale for the recommendation for 5 years plus 2, so I can answer that. You know, based on our understanding of the market and our experience of the existing contracts, that length of contract, that length of contract enables the team to build up a collaborative partnership relationship with our contractors. As I said in the introduction, you know, it ensures that we can provide a better quality service and better quality works for the benefit of our residents. You know, and as I said, I think in the answer to Councillor Austin's question, whatever happens with LGR, our primary responsibility with these contracts is to maintain our stock of social rented homes in a good condition for the benefit of our tenants, and that will not change with LGR. You know, whether it's us or our successor council, those works will still need to be done.
Yep.
Thank you. And the monitoring officer may wish to come in on this as well. In terms of the contracts, they will novate across the new authority, and that's something that will be done automatically. I think in terms of your questions, why are we entering a contract of this length, given that we're not into the shadow authority region yet? There will be a situation where the shadow authority will be required to sign off certain contracts at certain valleys and expenditure at certain valleys. We're not in that area yet, and we don't know the geography that we're dealing with. What is important is that we do get value for money with the contracts we're dealing with at the moment. If we were to go to a shorter contract, it would be very difficult to get the economies of scale, resulting in lower annualised costs, because the market, they don't want to mobilise for shorter periods of time. So that would actually put the achievement for value for money in jeopardy. I think what we also need to realise is that when we get to vesting day on the 1st of April 28, it doesn't all change overnight. It's most likely that lots of our services will still operate on a district locality basis for a period of time until that transformation occurs. I would expect, again, as Mr. Porter said, those exact conversations haven't been had yet. My expectation is that we will see a number of services actually operate under, you'll have a Thanet planning team, a Thanet housing team, a Thanet building control team for a period of time until they can all be merged, and actually having these contracts in place is pretty standard practice. What we wouldn't want to be seeing the authority do is sign up to say a £2 million contract for a new IT supplier sort of a couple of months before vesting date. That doesn't make any sense, but this, I would say, is very much still business as usual, and ensuring that we're getting value for money for our residents and our taxpayers.
Thank you, yes.
Chair, could I just add one comment to that as well, just to complete that answer? Because I also think we need to be mindful of the workload of the new council after vesting day. You know, if we have a large number of routine work, business as usual contracts expiring within the first year, they are going to really struggle to procure replacements for all of those contracts. So we do need to stagger the timetable for replacement contracts well beyond vesting day, in addition to the things that Chris has said about value for money. You know, I think there's a number of reasons for, you know, not ending contracts on the 31st of March 2028, which frankly would cause quite a lot of chaos during 2028.
I mean, just really to support what both Chris and Bob have said, that in the first place, contracts will automatically novate to the new authority by way of a vesting order. So that's the first thing, that's kind of the practical legal things, but also really just to support all of those councils that I've spoken to, the monitoring officer that I've spoken to, really talk about just how enormous the job is for the first couple of years, and actually what they need is so much still in place. It's just the job is so enormous, and that kind of security and stability that some things are carrying on as they need to. And obviously this is a service that is going to be needed. Like Chris says, it's not like a £2 million pound ICT contract that we might then need to do away with. We are going to need these services. So I think that there are good reasons for entering into a contract of this scale at this time.
Yeah, so two comments. One that you probably will expect from me, which is when we're looking at suppliers, can we also ask them about cybersecurity? It's our biggest risk as a council. We're evaluating suppliers based on various criteria. Let's make sure that they're not going to potentially impact our systems and they've got certain controls in place. The second one was the report talks about how this is going to be run as a mini competition for a framework, and then lauds some of the positives for local government of taking a framework. I can certainly see the benefits to the council of that, but I wouldn't want people to think that that in itself is a way of choosing contracts that doesn't have its negatives. As somebody who has run a company in the past that's on the other end of that, frameworks like this are actually quite exclusionary. You have to, usually it's knowing people, and usually it's a company of a certain size. So even though it might be for this size contract something that makes sense and might be something you want to support, I think if you're looking for other contracts in the future, I think we just need to be aware that actually that excludes local companies, smaller companies who may actually be able to bring different expertise and ideas. And doing a central framework in this way, particularly on contracts of this size, means you're going to get the same sort of contractor that's doing the same thing for 10 other councils. And while there's positives of that, it does mean that as an industry, you do get the same mistakes being made over and over again, and that's the problem that I think we've seen. I'm sure you're aware of that, but I just wanted to flag that up as something that I'm sceptical about how useful frameworks are. I can see the value because it gets through a lot of red tape, but I think you lose a lot of the ingenuity.
I'll take the point about cybersecurity. I'll feed that back, and I think that's well made. I mean, there are benefits and disadvantages of whichever procurement strategy you approach. We've used the frameworks organised by the South East Consortium quite a bit in the tenant and leaseholder services. They are based in Kent, the organisers of that framework, and there are local contractors that access that. So, I mean, it does depend on the size of the contracts, of course, and these are relatively small contracts. So I would expect that, any of the large contractors that, are bidding for national contracts not to be interested in something of this scale. So £3 million over 7 years, it's not really a lot of money. They're quite small scale contracts, so I'd expect small contractors to bid for it.
Could I ask if energy efficiency,
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was just going to add, Councillor Scobie, we obviously look at each contract and procurement process on its own merits. Gemma Paul, our procurement manager, will advise the contracting officer as to what the right approach is, but as a default, our general advice is we should go out through an open procurement to market to give everyone the opportunity to bid for it. Frameworks have their advantages in terms of speed and access and to get to market and standardisation, but the whole premise of procurement process is you have an open, transparent process that allows as many entrants and participants to the market to bid for the contract, and that is always our sort of starting position, and we work through that depending on the specifics of the particular procurement.
Councillor Wing.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo what's been said. I think the key things here are our residents living in our properties and actually safeguarding going forward. There could be a massive mess in the changeover to the new authority, and I think it would be totally appropriate to have something set in stone. The last thing we want is buildings not being properly maintained in terms of their roofs and windows going forward. We've just managed to clear up a lot of the mess that was left by a previous company that was running our housing stock, and we've now got a handle on moving forward, and I think this is quite prudent to ensure that in that transition period we continue to do the high quality work we're doing presently.
Could I ask if energy efficiency is going to figure in these, improving it, that is, in these contracts?
Well, the purpose of these contracts are not specifically about energy efficiency in themselves. They're about the replacement of existing building components. But obviously, when we replace building components, we replace them with building materials that are compliant with building regulations at the time. And if we're replacing a roof, then it's an opportunity to ensure that we take the opportunity to enhance thermal efficiency as well, if there is an opportunity to do that. So we would always do that. It's not necessarily the same contractor, but we would be able to, for example, if we are changing the roof covering and there's an opportunity to enhance roof insulation, then why wouldn't we would do that at the same time? Windows, we would be looking for energy efficiency window solutions as well. So UPVC double glazing is a key part of the UPVC window and door replacement program. So we would be looking to use energy efficient windows in that program as well.
Is that the overview and scrutiny panel are asked to endorse the following recommendation to Cabinet. 1. The letting of 2 5-year contracts with provision for extending this at the Council's discretion by 2 12-month periods for the supply and fit of UPVC windows and doors, roof replacements. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Austin. Seconder. Councillor Davis. Do members agree? Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Next item is item 7, draft biodiversity strategy consultation. I will now call on Adrian Verrill to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. As members will probably be aware, the Council has a biodiversity duty under the Environment Act 2021, and the draft biodiversity strategy, which is before you, Annex 1 to the report, is one of the key means of us delivering on our biodiversity duty and setting out our ambitions for biodiversity across the district. It sets out a vision to protect, enhance and restore Thanet's biodiversity. It covers all the major habitats that are present in the district and establishes some priorities to guide local nature recovery. It sets out some clear objectives to deliver measurable biodiversity improvements across Thanet, and it's intended to act as a framework for the Council to integrate nature recovery into planning, land management and community initiatives in line with other initiatives such as the county-wide local nature recovery strategy. The draft strategy has been developed, I should say, primarily by the Council's Biodiversity Officer, Michael Lee, in conjunction with a number of other key officers right across the Council, different departments, who have either a direct or indirect role in biodiversity. And the next stage is obviously to consult with local people, local organisations, to get views on the strategy itself. We're seeking members' approval to proceed with that consultation. I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can. Thank you.
Could you summarise what the targets are?
At the moment, we are working through trying to set, I think part of what this is about setting an overall set of strategies, the set of priorities which look at the various habitats within Thanet, so that's coastal areas, farmland in particular, and trying to improve those, and looking at urban habitats as well. Trying to ensure that we get the best from the biodiversity net gain requirements under planning, looking to support things like the local nature recovery strategy, various other projects such as Stour Valley Restore. So the working through of those targets will develop as we consult. Really this is about trying to get that initial support and any ideas that we have missed in terms of improving biodiversity across Thanet.
Thank you. I think this is excellent. I'm really glad that this has been put forward. Can I ask, have we been informed by best practice from other councils who have already started on this journey?
Yes, but we have quite good relationships with other councils, working with Dover and Canterbury in particular, in terms of working with their ecologists and the sorts of projects and strategies that they're devising. We've been involved with the Stour Valley Countryside Project as well, in terms of the Stour Valley Restore, and we work with KCC, ecologists and others. So, you know, what we're trying to do is to sort of push the boundaries a little bit, to do something that we've never really done in quite this way for Thanet before, and to, you know, looking to meet our statutory duties, but we will be looking at best practice all the time for this.
And just to ask one more thing, have we made any connections with, for example, our local university, so someone can actually see what effect we're making and then actually make an assessment on the work that we're doing to look for improvements and so forth?
Michael actually used to work for Hadlow College, and he has maintained those connections, and with other universities as well. I think students have been involved in some of the survey work that we have for things like Birdwise projects. So, you know, those connections are there, and we will continue to make use of those as well.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to comment what an excellent report this is, and very thorough. I just wanted to confirm also that as a council, this highlights the absolute perverseness, if that's the correct word, of what's going on with National Grid, trying to bring in the cabling through Pegwell Bay and destroying swathes of the farmed area actually on Minster Marshes. So apart from the ecology and the effect on migrating birds, etc., but this really rammed home to me the lunacy of what we're facing down there. Now, I know it's a DCO application, so it will be a government decision, yeah? But with the amount of information we've got here and that, can we please ensure that those campaigning against that utter farce and destruction of our environment include this excellent research? Because I think anybody reading through this and seeing what's at stake would take a stronger view on this nonsense that we're putting up with down there. But well done to all concerned, because as I say, quick to criticise but quick to praise. This is a robust piece of work, and I think everything that we can do to protect and preserve our environment we should be doing anyway, and that's always the way I've thought. But this actually sets out, and it's the incredible list of birds that are included in here that also migrate on and off of the marsh and and so on. This plus the work of the campaigners highlights why we have to be robust as a council and try and protect the interests of the people, because otherwise National Grid are going to be guilty of rape and genocide of nature from Pegwell Bay right across to the middle of the marsh.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second what Councillor Davis was saying there and encourage him. He's got till midnight to submit a written response to the Planning Inspectorate, and we can all put our names down to speak at future hearings with the Planning Inspectorate, and I would encourage people to visit the Minster Marshes website and have a look at that and see what contribution they may be able to make there, because the more of us who speak on these matters, the better. I'd like to pay tribute to Councillors Wing and Smith from our group, who spoke extremely eloquently last week at the hearings on that. I'm really impressed with this, Mr. Verrill. It looks great. My concern, I suppose, is the bit that says commit staff time and budgets to deliver key actions, because I'm concerned that those staff are already being pulled in a lot of different directions. And the bit about actively applying for external grants, because obviously this is something that is forced upon all of us now, but are we confident that we have expertise in the filling in of grant applications, as well as the knowledge that backs up all the biodiversity strategy?
Yes, in terms of projects, obviously some of these projects will vary in the amount of resources that are required. So, for example, the Stour Valley Restore project, we are supporting that as a partner with staff time and input. That is largely going to be funded by government, assuming that their bid is successful. And we have supported that bid. So in some cases, it will be that we'll be plugging into external funding, particularly from government. If we are looking to do projects ourselves, obviously that is a different matter, and each thing would need to be bid for. Yeah, I mean, we have contacts within the council. That officer group have made a number of applications for various bits of grant aid. And as a council, we would probably have as much experience as anybody in applying for these things. So yeah, we're pretty confident that we'll be able to access what we need to carry forward projects.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. This is a bit tricky. Reading here about the connectivity of endangered species. Not for this meeting, but I would like to ask you how you plan to move the species over a 5-year study. Having been to a meeting about the beaver population and the minks, I'd be very interested to have a conversation to find out how you're going to deal with that.
Take that outside the meeting, or what? Yeah.
Yeah, happy to have a separate discussion about that.
Chair, I mean, I was completely honoured to have my 6 minutes on behalf of the Green Party, and I will be making sure I get my 3 minutes as an individual at the next hearing. But I'm glad you're going through a process of consultation, and I would advise anybody in this room, if they're not aware of the absolute devastation that is going to happen should this project go ahead, not just for the environment but for communities and businesses, just log on to either the Tuesday or the Wednesday while you're washing up or doing some ironing or putting the kids to bed, and just listen to those conversations, the speeches that everyday people gave. And these are the people that we should be consulting, because their knowledge of their own environment is absolutely amazing. Some of it brought you close to tears, the understanding of the environment that is around them and the richness there. In particular, I was particularly overwhelmed by the 3 farmers that spoke about the decades and centuries of soil build-up that could be at risk. So I'm really glad we're going to consult, and it would be really useful to reach out to the Save Minster Marshes group, in particular the one gamekeeper that we have that really, he shoots pheasants, so that doesn't sit well with me, but he has got such a body of knowledge, and locals like Keith Ross that are filming wildlife in our own harbour. We've got kingfishers in the Ramsgate Harbour. We have this whole diverse nature that exists around us that most of us are not even aware of. So I'm really glad the consultation's there, and I would advise people to have a listen and register to speak, because the devastation is coming our way if it's approved.
Did you?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this. It's really, really detailed, and I really enjoyed reading it. On Broadstairs Town Council, we are really trying to improve the biodiversity in our town. So I'm really pleased that one of the priorities is to improve the nature in urban environments, and it would be really good if we could work together to try to do that. I know that the Beacon Road estate, which is in my ward, is completely nature depleted, and me and my ward colleague have been trying for a long time to get trees replaced and possible rewilding of green spaces there and stuff like that. So it'd be really good if we could work together with town councils. I know we have got budgets to do this, so we can
match fund or whatever, that we can work together to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say just in response to both those questions, it is our intention to consult as widely as we can. But obviously, in terms of bringing forward projects, working with different bodies is obviously going to be equally important as well.
That the Overview and Scrutiny Panel are asked to endorse the recommendation to Cabinet to approve the draft biodiversity strategy for Thanet for public consultation, and to approve the strategy document and its overarching vision and objectives for consultation and future adoption, subject to consultation outcomes. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Austin. Can I have a seconder? Councillor. Thank you. Do members agree? Next item is item 8, acquisition of 11 section 106 homes at Tuthill Street, Minster. Can I call on Bob Porter again to
Thank you.
us?
So this report is recommending and it's going to Cabinet next week, with recommendation to acquire 11 homes as part of the Council's permanent housing programme. The programme approved has been approved by Cabinet, and Council has agreed the capital funding to support the programme of £100 million over 4 years to deliver at least 400 homes. So these 11 are part of that programme. Like all of the projects that we've brought forward, we've modelled the financial impact of the acquisition on the HRA business plan. You'll see from the report that there's a small revenue deficit in the initial years, but that turns into a revenue surplus after year 6, and those surpluses increase throughout the lifetime of the business plan projections. We generally project forward between 30 and 50 years the costs, income and costs of the units in our HRA, and so we can model the financial impact of those dwellings. It's important to say these 11 units are part of a Section 106 agreement that was part of the planning consent that the developer BDW obtained to build the homes. As with every affordable unit that's part of a Section 106 agreement, we would expect to see a significant discount on market value for the acquisition on the basis that the developer is required to deliver affordable homes without social housing grant, without effectively public capital subsidy. You'll see from the report that this is a particularly good purchase in that respect, in that the purchase price is less than half of the market value, and represents really good value for money for the HRA business plan. An average unit price of 131,000, which I think is a really good success for the team. There'll be a local lettings plan attached to these homes once we have possession of them, and so that they will be let to people on the housing register and to people that are currently in temporary accommodation waiting for a permanent home. So I think they're all the key points, but of course if you've got any questions I'd be happy to answer them.
Could I ask, do you favour Minster people at all in?
Not necessarily in a scheme like this. Sometimes there are things called local affordable housing schemes in planning terms that have got specific restrictions to people from a particular village, but they are what we call rural exception planning applications. This is not one of those. So the homes would be available to anybody on our housing register that qualified for that size of home. We do run the allocations process on giving people choice about where the homes they express an interest in and where they go. So we would be prioritising people that had actively chosen to live in Minster. And obviously that would include people that have already lived there or have got ties to Minster, or want to move and settle there. So I think the direct answer to your question is no, but the process does involve people expressing an active interest in moving or staying in the village.
Just one, it looks like an incredibly good deal compared to others that we've done. Why are they so cheap?
Well, I mean, I think the answer to that question is that they are Section 106 agreement units. So the planning consent for these homes specifically requires them to be affordable rent without any public capital subsidy. So the developer then has to set the price point at a level that a social housing provider can afford, which is what they've done. So obviously we've modelled this in our business plan, and we think we can afford them. I think it's also worth saying that a lot of other social housing providers, housing associations effectively, and I know we've said it here before, are not actively progressing Section 106 schemes, particularly small ones like this in our district. So it effectively means that the number of providers that are interested in taking up these opportunities is quite small, and that impacts on the values as well.
Sorry, Chair, it's just, and thanks, Bob, I'm not trying to be obtuse here, but as I say, this makes sense to me, that given the scale and the 106 and so on. So why have we paid so much more on hundreds of the other houses that we're buying through this 400 pledge?
Well, it all depends on the nature of the agreement. So as I say, if the 400 homes is made up with a number of different mechanisms. So some of it is Section 106 units like this, and we would expect those to come forward with a significant discount from market value to make them affordable. The original business plan that went to Cabinet and Council suggested that discount needed to be in the region of 40% of the market value. These ones exceed that, others have been 40 or lower, but on average across the programme we're doing pretty well against that target. Ones that are not in Section 106 agreements, they're effectively market units attracting a market price. Now if we buy a bulk of them, we'd expect some discount, but you wouldn't get discounts of this scale because they are effectively homes that could be sold at market value. Generally, those homes will need to be supported with capital funding, capital grant of some form. That was in the original business plan as well. That either comes from social housing grant from Homes England, or it comes from our recycled use of right to buy receipts. We do have also some cash commuted sums from other Section 106 agreements that we can direct to these schemes as well. The borrowing element of those more expensive schemes should still on average only be about 60% of the cost to make them stack up. So what we're saying is that the discount, the 40% discount, in this case is coming from the developers, in other cases is coming from Homes England, or it's coming from our right to buy receipts, or it's coming from other Section 106 agreements. So that's why you see such a variation in prices. But in terms of the business plan, it's the level of borrowing that's needed that's the key thing. And we've kept a close tab on that. And so far, we're pretty well within the parameters set up for the overall programme.
I guess if we waited for this sort of deal to come along, we just wouldn't get the numbers that we require.
Yeah, just a very quick question. Under the 106 agreement, is that their total commitment to sell to us cheap, or do they have any commitment towards the community other than discounting to us? Do they have any ongoing commitment under 106?
I don't know the details of this particular Section 106 agreement beyond what it says in this report. But generally, I'll answer that question on a more general basis. Section 106 agreements will include affordable housing outputs, but they might also include highways outputs or contributions to local facilities, play provision, green space, sometimes health or social care or education or library outputs. So all of those things are in Section 106 agreements, depending on the needs of that particular local community. And they're also influenced by our consultation with our statutory consultees, such as KCC and the Health Authority, that input into that and, say this development's going to impact on the need for school places in the village, and therefore you'll have to make a contribution to education, for example. So undoubtedly this agreement will include some other things, but I don't have the details of what they are tonight. I would just add that obviously those agreements are in the public domain as well. Yeah. So, if anybody wanted to have a look at what's in the full agreement, it is available.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chair. It was just my concern that the community can lose out at our gain. Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to say something?
Yes, just wanted to say that this looks excellent, and I'm particularly pleased with obviously the value that we're getting out of these houses, but also the relationship with BDW, looking at what the report tells us about the type of developer they are, the enhancement of the sites, and the expertise that they have in carbon neutral properties, which I hope will allow us to build a partnership that may perhaps help us to make housing more climate friendly, but also cheaper for people to live in the future. Thank you.
That the Overview and Scrutiny Panel are asked to endorse the following recommendation to Cabinet. 1, that the Council progresses with the acquisition of 11 homes at an acquisition price of 1.44 million, subject to Cabinet approval. And 2, to note the wider context of the report. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Davis, Councillor Bright seconding. All those in favour? Thank you. Acquisition of 4 homes for temporary accommodation to be purchased from Vistry. I now call on Bob again.
Yeah, thank you. So, I think this really highlights what we've just been talking about, isn't it? So, yeah. This deal is quite different. So, the first thing is these are not part of our housing revenue account 400 homes programme. This proposal is part of the separate programme to acquire a housing for temporary accommodation. So it's within the general fund. It's funded wholly by general fund borrowing, and the business plan for the business plan that is attached to that programme and was approved by Cabinet and Council was on the basis that us buying and providing our own temporary accommodation is both better quality and for our the families that we support, for our customers, but it also saves the council money against the current cost of providing temporary accommodation in the private sector. So if you look at these schemes in isolation, they are more expensive and they look more expensive, but they are cheaper than the council providing securing temporary accommodation in the private sector, which was the rationale for doing it. These 4 homes are not part of a Section 106 agreement. They're just homes that would otherwise be sold on the market. So you would expect to have to pay market value for them. Because we're proposing to buy 4 all at once, it helps the developer with their marketing and disposal strategy. So you'd expect to see some discount for bulk purchase. And we anticipate, the report says we're still waiting for the final valuation, but we anticipate that the price in this agreement is around about 17% under market value for those 4 homes. So quite a different proposal, but I think I've explained the reason why that is different. We would be using these as part of the council's statutory obligation to provide temporary accommodation for homeless families. I think one other thing to say is that we've also been, as well as the last report where we've been working with BDW on a number of schemes, we've also worked with Vistry on previous projects, and we've been really pleased with the quality of the homes that they've provided us. So if you have any questions.
This seems to be a good deal, but what we know about the general fund, can we afford it?
Well, I think the answer to that question is we can't afford not to do it, because the cost of private sector temporary accommodation is a huge budgetary pressure currently. This saves money in the long run, and not doing it effectively increases the cost. But I think the Section 151 officer would...
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a good question. I would say this is a strategic defensive action against the largest and most significant structural problem in the Council's general fund revenue budgets. This is, as Mr. Porter's rightly said, swapping expensive revenue expenditure on overnight temporary accommodation for strategic capital investment will bring the overall cost down in the long term.
I think that's the key thing that Mr. Blundell's just referred to, is that this is capital expenditure rather than revenue expenditure. So although we're using it as a means to an end to provide a service, it does at least give us an enhanced balance or asset on the balance sheet ultimately, rather than continuing to line the pockets of ex-council officers running companies like Paramount, which is the reality of it. You know, that whole scam has been allowed to go on for over a decade, and I think it's an absolute disgrace to all concerned. So anything that stops that expenditure and also reinforces our balance sheet has to be a good thing, even though it means biting the bullet to do it. But let's get control of this, because it's obscene the amount of money that's been paid to these so-called providers. And the reality is that our residents have been dumped in Maidstone, Medway, and families split asunder, people that cannot and now do not want to get back to their own family because frankly it's abuse, this business of overnight accommodation. There are young women being walked in on by officers from these providers and things. So everything we can do to get this back under control and in our own, I think we have to bite the bullet and do it.
Yeah, and just to add to the point, I was reading that councils across the country had spent £3 billion on temporary accommodation in 2024 to 25, which is staggering.
Chair, if I may, just to add to that, that's a comparable I heard, and I think Mr. Porter was at the same session when we heard this. Last year, London councils alone were spending £4 million a day on temporary accommodation, which is just a staggering figure, £4 million a day on temporary accommodation overnight.
Recommendations.
Sorry, Chair. Because I do think it's such an important issue. I think comment on out of area placements, because Councillor Davis, you rightly raised the fact that out of area placements, are really difficult for families that have to move away when that time of crisis, and we've worked really hard to try and bring families back. Before we started this programme, we had 170 households that were placed outside of the district. As of, I've got the figures for the 10th of November, so it was just a few days ago. That number was 65. So it's hugely reduced as a result of the
I'd like
work
to
we've been
recall
doing.
congratulations for that, because it's one of the biggest issues affecting the welfare, the social welfare, mental health welfare and everything of our residents. So well done.
Well done. The recommendation is that the Overview and Scrutiny Panel are asked to endorse the following. One, that the council progresses with the acquisition of the 4 homes at an acquisition price of £1,050,000, subject to Cabinet approval. And 2, note the wider context of the report. Can I have a proposer? Yep. Seconder, Councillor Austin. Do members agree? Yep. Nearly there, members. Item 11, Thanet Regeneration Programme Project Decisions. Would councillors please note that the report in the main agenda pack for this item has been replaced by the report in the supplementary agenda pack. Please refer to the supplementary agenda 2 for the correct report. I will now call on Louise Askew to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I bring this report to the Overview and Scrutiny Panel this evening as it is a key decision and en route to Cabinet for approval. The report provides an update on the Highways Infrastructure Project with a request to Cabinet to formally close down the project. The report outlines the challenges faced in progressing the project, including unresolved technical and financial issues with Kent County Council regarding the approvals and revenue costs for traffic management related to the tunnel closure. These challenges have rendered the project undeliverable within the grant funding timeframe and with no revenue fund available to cover the resources required by the county. The report highlights the Council's new funding flexibility under the Local Regeneration Fund, which allows for the cancellation of unviable projects and reallocation of funds to other existing or new projects without approval from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. It recommends, the report recommends reallocating the funding from the Highways Infrastructure Project to a Ramsgate-wide contingency fund within the Thanet Regeneration Programme to ensure the deliverability of other projects and retain the grant funding. Alternatives were considered for the reallocation of the funds. However, until we are in a position with contracts agreed on price for project delivery on Pier Yard, Green Campus and Broad Street, we cannot consider any new options to ensure we are minimising any financial risks to the projects. Officers understand how disappointed councillors are, as we are too, having progressed this project to nearing completion. We will, however, continue to advocate for the progression of the Highways Infrastructure Scheme in the future, with a shovel-ready project. Once issues are dealt with in terms of the tunnel, this scheme can be fundraised for. The Overview and Scrutiny Panel are asked to note the report and recommendations set out and consider any representations they might like to make to Cabinet. Thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. As I said at the councillors' briefing, this is disastrous and I'm so disappointed about it, as I know that officers are and councillors too. I must admit it had not dawned on me that the possibility of option 2, doing things piecemeal, doing a reduced scheme, was not still an option even after I came out of the councillors' briefing. I don't know if I'm the only one there, if I just hadn't quite clocked it properly. But I'd be grateful if I asked Ms Askew about this before the meeting, and I'd be grateful if she would just go through what she explained to me about why it isn't possible to do a reduced version of the scheme, because even a reduced version of the scheme would make so much difference to the permeability of Ramsgate and the more effective use of the space.
Thank you. Because this is a highway scheme rather than a public realm scheme, we are required to get approval through a Section 278 notice from Kent County Council as the Highways Authority. If we tested the ability to do, as you say, parts of the scheme, improve the crossing points, 20 mile an hour, reduce some of the oh my goodness, sorry, I can't get my words out, reduce some of the curbs or increase the curbs to slow traffic down. Some of those things that we could do just to reduce the impact of the car on people crossing the road. And we were advised that any new, it would be classed as a new scheme, and any scheme that changed any part of that road in and around the roundabout from Military Road onto name of the road. Oh, this is terrible. Harbour Parade, thank you. It's been a long day. Would need a new Section 278 and would unlikely be approved through the county's approval process until the other challenges that have been raised through this have been dealt with. Now, sorry, that's not to say that if we look at things that are more public realm focused rather than actual delivery on the highway, there aren't other things that we could look at a later stage, but that's not what this scheme is at the moment.
Thank you. I mean, the conversation we had before the meeting was about surely there must be ways we can challenge this, surely there must be ways we can do something about this, and to get across the message that, I mean, I saw this earlier when the internet went down. I hadn't read this paper, but I did see that people had started to see the report in the Isle of Thanet news, and we got some very, very, very angry and disappointed residents commenting on local WhatsApp groups, why aren't councillors all over this, why aren't you doing something about it, etc, etc, etc. So we do need to be able to explain in some detail to those residents why it isn't possible and why we can't challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, to add to what Councillor Austin has said, I find this absolutely farcical. I'm just going to use the word. I've got a copy of a printout from 2019 when this was this has been revamped or rehauled, whatever the word is, however many times. I've got a printout of this when it was vaunted long before anybody had ever heard of levelling up or anything, and I think the government hadn't changed then. This is yet another example of us trying to rehash the same as happened before, the same old, failed, ill thought out. I mean, for God's sake, we are 30 miles away from Maidstone. We are supposed to, and yet we're behaving like a vassal authority to KCC. How the hell can we have invested the amount of money and officer time over however many hits we've had at this proposal, and here we are, oh well, we can't do it now. Somebody, either this end or that end, needs to be held accountable here, because this is tens of thousands of pounds of resource just wasted. You know, we've got the Smack Boys home fast, we've got this, we've got, and now we're being told that you can't give money to this, but you can put £2 million into a contingency fund behind a tin shed with solar panels that nobody knows who's going in there. Why can't you get this money and vire it behind the fishing facilities, or one of the things that will actually do something worthwhile in Ramsgate? All we're doing is paying to talk about things, come up with unworkable schemes because we didn't do our job properly, and then we employ another load of consultants to waffle about what was wrong that time. This is farcical. What percentage of the levelling up money has been wasted on waffle not to deliver? Because at the moment, all we've got is a pier yard that's so far, from what I can see, been completely encumbered, so you can't now get proper access with lorries and things to the slipway. We've got the closed down slipways that were illegally scrapped, that had an enforcement order on them 5 years ago. What's being done about that? Nothing. But we can waste money on all of this, and yet, you know, what we're going to come out of this is possibly, oh, the clock tower looking like it did because it's listed and should do, and what? This is farcical. And how much waffle do we have to listen to before somebody actually holds someone to account? Because somebody, either this end or at KCC, hasn't done their job here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be at this stage suddenly going, oh. Plus the fact, why are Brett's being allowed to expand exponentially? And we saw an email from Mr. Humber last week saying that whilst they're in breach of their licence, they're going to be allowed to continue that. I am Councillor Green, because it's the lorries from Brex going along Military Road that are causing all this problem. And the whole thing is an utter farce, and it needs exposing for what it is. We've got people, the town is in uproar at the moment. If you and I were to negotiate, or any of us, there's a thing called good faith comes into it. And yet we have people that are in cahoots with KCC in whatever capacity. And yes, I said that because they're being allowed to do whatever they want, and it's blocking, but we're wasting millions on projects that can't be delivered because their back's being rubbed by KCC. So what is going on here? I think these questions need to be asked, and they need to be asked in public.
Could I ask at what level between TDC and KCC has this been raised?
Yeah, happy to answer that. We have had meetings with that have been led by Colin Carmichael as Chief Executive, with the Director responsible for highways at the County Council, and the leader has also written to the leader of Kent County Council. I mean, the challenges around the technical aspect to do with engineering and the roads coming together, that and some changes in regulations, all of which come together at a point where we were looking at delivery. So the testing of that with the most senior levels at KCC has come back down to that technical information from highways colleagues, who have actually tried to support and identify solutions as part of this process, working with officers.
I was under the impression that KCC are the Highways Authority, and this is a road. Is the problem, do we own Military Road? Is that the problem?
Yes, Councillor. So we, Thanet District Council, own Military Road. As soon as you go onto Harbour Parade, that's public highway. I mean, I'm enormously disappointed in this, because not just because of the project itself, but I think it threatens the viability of Pier Yard. And I know you've told me before that it won't threaten the access to the East Pier that is proposed as part of this project. But is that correct?
So our engagement so far with KCC Highways on the Pier Yard scheme is actually, I think they even recommended the new road layout to East Pier because it improves that accessibility. So there shouldn't be, we're not increasing or changing the flow of traffic, we're just improving the access onto East Pier. So I don't expect any challenges to come from that.
But we don't have the necessary agreement yet. And yet we've known about this problem since June, did I see in the report? I mean, why hasn't it been settled?
Sorry, say that last bit again.
Why hasn't it been settled?
What, the issue with the highway scheme?
When we've known about it since June.
So we have been negotiating, as I said, the leader and chief executive have been negotiating with the county council to try and work through a workable solution. But in the end, until the challenges are dealt with around the tunnel and the issue of when it's closed, there is going to always be a need for, or a need as put forward by the county, to have a resource to manage the traffic should the tunnel be closed. And so we've been working with the county to try and get some agreement around that, which has just not happened. And that sort of thing takes time. And then in the drafting of this report and identifying any further solutions.
No, sorry, I meant the access to Pier Yard, etc.
What's the hold up there?
Oh, it's just about the REBA stages in terms of design and what approvals you get at the different stages. So it's going into REBA stage 4, where we have more detailed design work, and that's when we start the approvals process.
I think I'm being really thick, because I can't see, after reading this document, listening to people, and I'm seriously not having a go at you, believe me, how and why does the tunnel have any bearing on the road improvements? Because whether we improve those roads or not, Brett's lorries or lorries from the port are still going to go down Military Road, whether there's a road improvement or not. And if Sea-Link goes ahead and 360,000 tonnes of aggregate have to be shipped from the port to the Save Minster Marshes site to lift a building the size of 13 football pitches 2 metres off the floor because it's on a floodplain, then we are going to be in serious trouble if there isn't a long-term solution for the tunnel. And it seems to me that sits with KCC fair and square. And I actually feel as if KCC are holding a gun to our heads, all of our heads, officers as well, because the problem is going to be there whether there's road improvements or not. Exactly. So I've got another question after that, sorry. That one would be good to help me understand.
Thank you, Councillor. I think as Ms Askew has sort of outlined already, there's the process for this. There's a Section 278 agreement. There's a safety audit that takes place on new highway schemes, and that safety audit is part of the reason why you can't just split a scheme up, because then you'd have to do another safety audit on the whole thing and the Section 278 as well. Part of that, and from liaison with the KCC highway officers, it's about when the tunnel is closed, through that proposed scheme that's now not going ahead, how those lorries will navigate through that junction, and the requirement for marshalling of those lorries, which would be a revenue burden on Thanet District Council when the tunnel's closed, and something that's to a certain extent unquantifiable. It depends on the frequency of tunnel closures, whether those are emergency closures and planned closures. Now we know that there's a plan next year for the tunnel closures to become less frequent, but what we can't say is what happens when there's a closure because there's, for example, an accident like there was last year, and that closure could be for many months. In that scenario, Thanet District Council would be responsible for providing marshalling potentially 24/7 while that tunnel's closed for any HGV vehicle under that proposed highway scheme. So that's something that's relatively new, but something that's very difficult to overcome, and was one of the sort of main problems that's sort of highlighted in this report.
Sorry, Chair. So the marshalling is only required by KCC if the new highways programme goes ahead. That because the road, I mean, if you watch lorries, I've got a camper van, I struggle to get around there. Sometimes I have to go round the whole roundabout to go up. And the lorries are they have a serious problem anyway, coming round that bend. I just don't understand why. I mean, are we at risk of having to be forced into marshalling going forward by KCC because they're not going to spend the £6 million on the tunnel? Or what you're saying is the marshalling is only required because there's new health and safety audit of the new junction, which I thought was going to improve the situation for lorries going around the corner. So I'm sort of at a loss. Also, I've actually walked my entire ward. I've taken the highway improvement plan and I've walked my entire ward. Every street is 24 pages long, and the key issue in our ward, and I think I can safely say the same for Eastcliff and most of Ramsgate, is pedestrian safety. We simply do not have enough. We have no town centre 20 is plenty. We have no safe crossing points on some of our serious seriously dangerous roads. And this scheme was certainly going to improve the pedestrian, the experience for pedestrians and the safety for pedestrians in and around that area there. So I'm just conflicted because I seriously think that KCC are holding a gun to our head, and part of me thinks we should say no, sorry. I just don't know what to think. It would be interesting to have a discussion with Ramsgate councillors to form a solid opinion as a town rather than just a couple of us, 3 or 4 of us here.
Just to be clear, are you saying that it's our scheme that will require marshalling? And if it's left as it is now, it won't?
Yes, so we're saying that the scheme as designed, I mean, this is a very tight junction. The scheme as designed would put HGVs turning up the road would be required to cross over the centre line of the road, and that under that safety audit requires marshalling. I mean, I think I would also like to say that I think we all share frustration that we haven't managed to get this scheme through. There's an awful lot of officer time has gone into this as well, and and a lot of hard work. But it's it's something that we have worked quite closely with KCC on recently, and I think KCC officers have tried hard to find a solution to this as well. And so we have to respect the KCC as the Highways Authority and the decisions that they're making.
So you're saying, as it is now, it won't require marshalling?
So as it is now, we haven't provided marshals, and we haven't been asked to provide marshals as it is now.
Thank you, Chair. 1 or 2 observations alongside a couple of questions, because we are now talking about the movement of vehicles on and around the harbour. First observation is the width of Military Road has been greatly reduced over the years by the putting of cafes, junk shops and everything else along there. That's one of the first observations that makes Military Road quite difficult now to navigate if you have 2 wide vehicles coming towards each other, with a particular pinch point at one point. I think at one time there was even a traffic light system there for a short while. The other thing is that when we're talking about Pier Yard car park, you've spoken about access to the East Pier. What about the access to the slipways? Should they become more active, or number 2 and number 3 put back into operation, which there is a big need for with the amount of wind farm vessels here now, and the fact that they have to go to Great Yarmouth to be serviced because there is no slipway capable if number 1 is busy. And also the fact that access to the crosswall itself and across the crosswall, because when the Port of Ramsgate was actually built, in the very first stages, the lorries would come through Pier Yard car park, across the crosswall, across the bridge and out the other side. This would be an alternative one-way system route. Should the tunnel be closed for any long period, it could be a one-way system route along Military Road, possibly one way, and then or through through Pier Yard car park and across the crosswall, but that will be subject to the bridge being able to take the weight. Now, there's just been an awful lot of money spent on that bridge, but 30-ton trucks were running across that on a daily basis, day in and day out, when the port was built, and not many people will remember that, but I do, because first thing they done was removed all Ramsgate Beach and Viking Bay and Broadstairs for the backfill. So my question really is, Is there going to be access to the slipways, and is there going to be access to the crosswall, in particular for the fishermen and also for other businesses which are along there, because there are one or two businesses? Thank you.
I understand that the plans for Pier Yard are about to come to planning, is that right? Fairly soon? By all means.
I'm happy to answer. So we are planning an engagement event in the new year, which is probably what you were thinking about before it comes to planning. Access to the crosswall, the slipways and East Pier have always been designed into the scheme. It's a working harbour. We understand the access requirements. We have made sure that within the brief for the design, we have taken into account the lease arrangements for the slipways. We are also talking to the organisations running the slipways as part of the plans for Pier Yard. So yes, we can confirm that access will be available, and the Harbour Master is a key stakeholder on that design project as well.
Councillor Wing, did you want to say something else? Is that the overall and scrutiny panel note the report and the recommendations set out below, considering any representations to Cabinet. Cabinet is asked to note the new funded flexibility that allows the Council to make changes to existing projects without seeking prior approval from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, including the ability to cancel a project and invest in existing or new projects. And 2, Cabinet is asked to agree the formal closure of the highways infrastructure project. Do I have a proposer for that? Councillor Davis. Seconder? Councillor Bright. All those in favour? 6, 7. All those against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Louise. Oh, there's a further, yeah, okay. Do members wish to note the report on the forward plan? That's the final item 12, forward plan. Do we wish to note the report?